Okay, Councillor Trevor, we're recording. You can start the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting of Conway County Borough Council, where we are all attending remotely. All microphones will be muted unless you indicate that you wish to speak using the raised blue hand function, at which point I will call out your name and wait for you to turn on your microphone. You can also use the chat facility. I would like to remind members that this meeting is being recorded. The aim is to live stream the meeting, but if that fails for whatever reason, the meeting will continue and a recording will be uploaded onto the council's website at the conclusion of the meeting. Translation from Welsh to English is available. Please select the language of your choice. We will take things slowly, so every application gets due consideration. All microphones will be muted unless you indicate you wish to speak using the blue hand function. We do have public speakers for some of the planning applications being considered today, and they will be introduced at the appropriate time. So members, if we now move on to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is the apologies for absence.
Just one apology, Chair, from Councillor Andrew Hinchcliffe.
Thank you. Item 2 is declaration of interest under the Code of Local Government Conduct. Members are reminded that they must declare the existence and nature of their declared personal interests. Okay, move on to item 3. It's urgent matters. Notice of items which, in the opinion of the chairman, should be considered at the meeting as a matter of urgency. I'm not aware of any urgent matters.
No, there are no urgent matters.
Okay, then we'll move on to consider the following reports, which is the planning applications.
Before we do, Mr. Chairman, could I ask, has there been an addendum? Because I've not had any notice of one.
I'm aware, yes, I think it was yesterday evening. I think Mr. Watson or Julia published it, and it did say it was the final addendum for today's meeting.
I received it yesterday, Phil.
I've not had it in my emails, and I checked last night and again this morning. I was wondering if somebody could send it to me.
I concur with that, Chair. I haven't had anything either.
Okay, members. Julia, would you mind emailing the members the addendum? Is that something you can do, please?
I'd like a copy because I didn't receive one.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. Okay, I'll move on to the first item that was originally down to be discussed was at Llansannon, and in case members didn't notice on the agenda, on the addendum, that this item has been withdrawn. So the next report is code reference 0/47560. It's the proposed replacement garage and a new single-story extension to the rear of dwelling 20 Minon Road, Llandudno. We do have a speaker for this, so I would ask Jane to
yes, Chair. Kerry is with us now. The speaker is with us.
Okay.
If you can unmute, please, Kerry.
Okay.
Okay, welcome, Ms. Kerry James. You do have 3 minutes to address the committee, and the clerk will remind you when you've got 30 seconds remaining. So when you want to begin in your own time, please.
Thank you. Good morning. I act on behalf of adjacent occupiers whose concerns relate to residential amenity. The application property is a semi-detached dwelling. The proposed rear extension would measure 4.3 metres deep and over 4.2 metres in height, not 3.9 metres as referred to in the committee report. It would be erected adjacent to the shared boundary with number 18. Due to its size and proximity, the development would have a significant impact upon the light entering the habitable rear rooms of number 18. Consideration needs to be given to the council's own householder design guide, which explains how the 45-degree rule should be applied. The extension would clearly fail to comply with the rule when applied to the habitable kitchen. The occupiers spend a lot of time in this room throughout the day, and a reduction in natural daylight entering the room would have a detrimental impact upon the well-being of the occupants. The orientation of the two dwellings, whose gardens face north, would exacerbate the situation. Due to the depth and height of the extension, the development would appear very overbearing and overdominant when viewed from the rear of number 18. It would detrimentally affect outlook from both habitable rooms and the rear garden. Officers accept that the proposed extension would exceed permitted development tolerances, but consider the impact of the adjacent property would substantially be the same. I disagree. In my view, the additional height of the eaves and rear projection of the extension is significant and would directly and detrimentally impact upon residential amenity over and above what could be erected under permitted development. Officers make reference to the planning history of the site. In my view, the current scheme is substantially different from the previous permissions. The proposed extension is considerably larger. This would result in a significant increase in the scale and massing of the extension when compared to the approved schemes. A roof light is proposed within the elevation facing number 18. The position of the window adjacent to the shared boundary could result in loss of privacy and noise pollution. In conclusion, the development, by virtue of its siting, scale and size, would cause demonstrable harm and have an unacceptable impact upon the residential amenities which the occupiers of number 18 could reasonably expect to enjoy. The development would therefore be contrary to planning policies DP3
20 seconds.
and DP4. It is requested that the application be refused. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss James. I'll now hand over to the planning officer. I think that is Mr. Watson. Okay.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. There's not much in the addendum. In fact, there's nothing in the addendum. Can I just check that members have had the addendum? Because obviously that relates to other applications. So if any members haven't had the addendum yet sent by Julia, could they message Julia? Julia's re-emailed it. Thank you. I wanted to show members the slides. This is one we'd probably normally take members to a site visit to if we were had a bit more flexibility with that, but we haven't been able to with COVID restrictions. But I want to show members the slides if possible, and I'll talk you through them. So the first, are members seeing this now, please? Yep, they are.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the orientation, obviously the application site is edged in red. So the next door semi-detached property, which is actually at a similar level, side by side. The rear elevation of these properties, you can see, faces north rather than south. So we're talking about the impact on the adjoining property to the east, semi-detached. And that's, as you can see, the orientation there. If Judy goes to the next slide, please. This shows the existing floor plan of the building, and it has an existing rear porch shown there. I think it says porch, but it's a small single-story extension existing at the back of the building. If you go to the next slide, please. This shows the proposal. So it's single-story, 4.3 meters in depth, extending backwards, and there's also a garage that's shown as well. So you can see the elevations. I've got some measurements that I'm going to talk to you about, but if you haven't got those in front of you, but by measuring the drawings, I'm just going to get the one for me. Yeah, okay. If you were to look at you'll notice that the ground level at the back of the buildings, going further north, slopes downwards. So as you go down further from the back of the building, you're going down in height. But but at the point where, if you look at the elevation drawings and the middle elevation drawing on the right hand side of what you're looking at there, you're looking at a side view of the extension, which is the view that the neighbouring property is going to get, where the bit in red is the near bit next to the boundary, and the bit in cream colour is the garage that's set further away. This also shows the outline of the existing small rear porch edged in blue, which you can't readily see. But if you, in terms of the sloping nature of the site, if you measure the height of the extension above ground level at the point at the rear of the building, it measures 3.16 meters above ground level. And what we've said in the report is that the permitted development height is 3 meters. So it's marginally greater than permitted development. It's 3.16 rather than 3. In terms of the overall height at that point as well, the ridge height, it's 3.9 meters. That's how we've measured it. But obviously, as you go further down, further back, if you were to look at it, it would appear higher. But it's not at the point where it's at the rear of the building itself. It's 3.9 meters, which is within the 4 meter maximum in permitted development. So it does exceed permitted development. I then want you to look at the elevation, which is the top one on the right-hand side, which is the rear elevation of the building. And if you look at it's not clear from what you're looking at, but I've done some measurements on this, and the next door neighbouring property has a kitchen window that we will show you in a photograph in a minute, but it has a kitchen window that's alongside the boundary, and it's the same level of height of the window as the application building. That kitchen window's within a foot or so of the boundary, but in terms of daylight impact, what you measure is from the boundary or from the extension itself to the centre of that window, and you measure to the centre of the window both vertically and horizontally. And if you do that measurement both vertically and horizontally to the centre of that adjoining kitchen window, and you measure the angle of the extension above the horizontal, it measures out at about 32 degrees. And what the guidance says in the BRE guidance is the 45-degree rule, which I'm going to show you a drawing of in a minute. And that says if the height of the extension above the horizontal exceeds 45 degrees, then there would be a significant effect on daylight. So what we're saying is it's below the 45-degree angle vertically. I want Julia to go, please, to the last 2 slides, just to go over that point again. So the penultimate slide is number 31. This one here, this is the guidance that's been the BRE document, figure 17, and it talks about the 45-degree rule of thumb. And it's talking about both vertically and horizontally. And it's showing 2 shadow lines. One of them is a horizontal shadow and one of them is a vertical shadow. But it's showing how those shadows relate to the center of the window. What it's basically saying is the extension has to exceed 45 degrees, both vertically and horizontally, for it to have this significant effect. What we're saying is it does exceed horizontally because it's extending out 4.3 meters, which does exceed the 45-degree angle, but it doesn't exceed the 45-degree angle when you look at it vertically, and it has to exceed them both for it to not satisfy BRE. BRE talks about significant effects, so by the same token, if it complies with a 45-degree angle, it would be not a significant effect. So we're saying it's vertically, it's 32 degrees rather than 45 degrees. And that's reflected in the elevations, and it's reflected in the sort of small extent above what's permitted development. To go through it a bit more, I'm going to take you to the photographs. If Julia can look at from the beginning photograph, I think, to start with, and we'll go through them quite quickly. So this is the application site, looking at it from the rear, which shows the existing rear porch, which is going to be removed. Okay, next one, please. Shows the adjoining kitchen window of the neighbouring property, but it also shows the vegetation that's in the neighbouring property on the neighbouring properties within the neighbouring properties boundary. Keep going, please. And the next one. And keep going. And I think you can probably go to slide 25 now, which are photographs from within the neighbouring property. So we're now switched over the boundary to the neighbouring property, and that shows, you know, fairly extensive vegetation within the garden of the neighbouring property on that side at the rear. And go to the next slide, and keep going. Keep going. This is the view that the neighbouring property currently has. So they're looking at a rear porch with a window that faces the neighbouring property. And this on the left-hand side of the photo, it shows the window, the kitchen window of the neighbouring property, which is the one that's potentially affected, which we're looking at in terms of daylight impact. Just to go back on a point, sunlight impact to this window isn't going to be significant because it faces north, and it isn't going to get any real sunlight. So in terms of sunlight impact, you look at windows that are within 90 degrees of south, and this is virtually due north. So we don't assess this in terms of sunlight impact because the sunlight doesn't really get any sunlight to start with. So daylight impact, we're looking at the window, kitchen window, and what it currently looks out at. And the next slide, please. This shows effectively the gap between the rear wall, the existing porch, and the start of the vegetation. And the next one, please. And I think we're virtually done. Okay, so that's not that relevant. So that's all I wanted to say, members. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll now open the debate for members. Please indicate whether you want to speak by pressing the raised hand icon on the screen. If for any reason I do not see you want to speak, please feel free to interject. You are able to switch on your own microphone if required, but please try and avoid interrupting other speakers. Members. Councillor Phil Capper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, officers, for the report. I don't know whether any other member had a phone call yesterday from the neighbour. I did on my council phone, and I informed the neighbour that I wouldn't be making any comment adversely or positively to him during that phone call. His concerns were about the light and about the additional height of the extension, cutting off more light. And I'm just looking for a bit of clarity from officers on, we're saying it, are we saying that this light reduction does exceed what we would normally expect, but doesn't exceed the regulations? Is that what we're saying?
Thank you, Councillor. We're looking at it in relation to what's permitted development, which is what the government allows under regulations, which don't require a permission from the local authority because there's already granted in those regulations. It does exceed permitted development because of the height of the eaves next to the boundary. So it does exceed what's permitted, but then, so we're then looking at the impact, and we're saying that the impact is acceptable because it complies with the BRE guidance in terms of the rule of thumb 45-degree angle. The speaker said it didn't comply, but I think the speakers only really looked at it horizontally and not looked at it vertically. And they haven't really explained why it doesn't comply. But we've looked at it both horizontally and vertically. It does comply vertically because it's less than the 45-degree rule of thumb. So that's what we look at with planning applications generally. It's not an adopted council policy, but it's a rule of thumb which we are encouraged to look at, and it's something which inspectors would look at if it went to appeal.
Thanks for that. Just a supplementary question then.
Yeah.
The next door neighbour also mentioned that there were 2 planning permissions in existence at the moment, which I understand there are. If that's the case, how much in height does the current application exceed the previous ones?
There is some reference to it in the report, and it is. To be honest with you, I'm not. I'd have to double check the figures because I wouldn't want to give you the wrong impression. It's something I can look at now on the drawings if you want me to, but we haven't got that information readily available. I can look at it by going back to the application documents and measuring them now if you want me to. In a sense, I haven't so much compared it to what's permitted before, although that is relevant. I seem to think it was let me just see what it says in the report, sorry.
I'm happy that if the chairman wants to take other questions first, you can find out and let me know a little later on.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Phil. Yeah, I think Mr. Watson will try and achieve that. The next speaker I've got down is Councillor Chris Cater. Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. And I know that you are very knowledgeable about BRE guidance. I've been in a couple of appeals with you where you've debated the guidance in great detail. It looks to me from Mr. Watson's presentation that the horizontal and vertical angles, together, one of them's acceptable. So it means that really we can't it's a shame about the heights, and we're often as a committee in this position where something is marginally exceeded and we have to decide whether it's significant enough to refuse the application. I think given the land sloping at the back and the planting and all the other features that we saw on the photographs, I think I would be content to go with the officer's recommendation in this case. So I'm glad it's been considered. I'm glad that we've had a good look at it with all those pictures and diagrams and so on. I think that's enough to convince me that the committee should approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Councillor Nigel Smith. Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Mr. Watson has summed it up pretty well with the BRE. But this window is actually north facing, so it won't get the full sunlight upon it. Like Chris, I'm satisfied with the officer's recommendation. I don't think the height of the extension will be that big an issue. I'm just thinking about some friends of mine who found out that their neighbouring attached property in Rill was having an extension, and they joined in and had the mirror image of that extension at the same time put in place by the builder, and there was a considerable saving. And it's, maybe this adjoining property might want to reconsider if this is approved and get the same extension put on their property, because it does make a vast difference. And both properties in Rill have got a significant improvement to them. And I can see this extension will bring a significant improvement to that property. I'm happy to second Christopher's recommendation if he has proposed it. So, yeah, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Ivo Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to second it as well. Basically, it's a borderline case, this one, where the dimensions are very, very close to almost permitted development in height and in length of the actual extension. So on that grounds, and knowing that it's within the BRE regulations, then I'm happy to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Ebo. Councillor Ken Stevens.
Thanks, Chair. My concern is about the massing of this, about the impact it will have on the adjoining property. But the main concern I had was what Councillor Phil's question was about height, actually. Do we have any information on that, Chair?
I'm just waiting for you all to finish speaking and then I'll come back to it. I haven't got anybody else down, so perhaps if Mr. Watson has got that information available, if he could just pass that on to the members.
Thank you, Chairman. I have looked at the other approvals. In the report on, bear with me, paragraph 2 of the appendix, it lists 3 approvals that have been granted. One of them was for a gazebo, which is at the bottom of the garden. The other 2 have almost the same reference number, put in at the same time, but they're for different rear extensions, both approved in 2018. So the one that's 45376, the first one there, was for a small single-story extension. Sorry, my colleague has just passed me some information. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it concurs with my own assessments as well. It was for a small single-story extension, which had a lean-to roof to it. So it was smaller in terms of how much it extended out from the rear of the building, and it was like effectively a larger rear porch. Again, it was alongside the boundary, but it had a lean-to roof, which meant that it obviously had more. It was higher where it joined the rear of the building, and that had an overall at a maximum height of 3.94 meters, and it was 1.8 meters deep extending backwards. So it was significantly smaller than the one that's currently now proposed, but it was alongside the boundary, and it was basically a larger hang on a second, I'm just double checking I've got the right information. Yeah, significantly smaller, a lean-to, but basically a replacement of what's currently there. So that was that one. The other one, which is 45375, that one was a big flat roof rear extension. So it was relatively low in height, but it was still 3 meters at eaves height where it was at the rear of the building, and then it extended backwards by 4 meters. So it was a similar sort of rear extension depth to what is currently proposed, a little bit shorter, and it had a flat roof up to near enough 3 meters high, whereas now we're looking at one with a pitched roof where the eaves height is 3.16 and it going up to 3.9. So really not very different in terms of its impact on compared to the current application. The current application is a little bit higher at eaves height and a little bit longer in depth coming backwards, but basically a similar extension and not much difference. And it looks to me like that particular extension probably would just comply with permitted development as it currently is. That's about what the permitted development amounts are at the maximum, whereas what we currently have is something that just exceeds the permitted development.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Phil, are you satisfied with that reply?
Yes, it's clarified the issue in my mind. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, members, I haven't got anybody else down to speak. I'm assuming that Councillor Chris did actually propose the approval, and it was seconded by Councillor Ken, was it?
Councillor Nigel.
Councillor Nigel. Thank you, Jane. Okay, members, then we'll put it to the vote. So if you could indicate when Jane calls your name out, whether you're for approving for the application or against the approval, or you're abstaining. Okay, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Phil Capper.
Yes, 4.
Councillor Chris Cater.
4.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
4.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
4.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
4.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
Obliged.
4.
Councillor Dave Rees.
4.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
4.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
4, given the officer's recommendations, Chair.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. I can confirm the recommendation has been approved.
Thank you. Okay, members. We'll now move on to the next application, which is 0/47651. It's the construction of one detached dwelling, the land to the east of Tudor Lodge, Bryn Gwynant Lane, Penryn Side, Llandudno. And we do have a local member to speak, so I could perhaps invite Councillor Carol Beard to address the committee. Councillor Carroll, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, and Jane will let you know when you've got 30 seconds remaining. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and the committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I've been contacted by concerned residents of Bryn Gwyn Lane and Penryn Side about what impact it will have on the community if the planning application of 0/47651 land east of Tudor Lodge is passed. The main concerns is the effect it will have on highways and pedestrian safety. The site is located on Bryn Gwyn Lane, Penryn Side, which is a very narrow lane leading to Mount Pleasant Terrace and consists mainly of 2 to 3 bedroom properties. The lane is so narrow that in parts it's not wide enough for 2 cars to pass, and there are already serious access problems there. Major concerns include that the narrow lane will become more congested both during and after construction work. The effects that the construction traffic will have on residents on the highway and the safety hazards that do come with that. There are already serious problems with access on Bryn Gwyn Lane with traffic, especially for emergency services vehicles, bin lorries, delivery drivers, due to the lane being so narrow and difficulties incurred with vehicles getting stuck and having to reverse back down to the lane, which I'm sure you agree is very, very dangerous. There is no pavement on parts of the lane. With additional traffic, it will be very dangerous for residents. The lane is very popular with walkers due to its location, so there are definitely safety issues here also for pedestrians, residents, including children and the elderly. Concerns from residents have also included the effect that the additional traffic will have, but also the poor visibility for vehicles on Bryn Gwyn Lane. It's very difficult and hard when coming down in a vehicle. Narrow corners and a steep hill, so that's one of the issues also. And obviously it's also the overdevelopment, which also presents risks for both residents and pedestrians. I hope you'll find these observations relevant and that you will consider them in your decision. Thank you once again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Okay, members, I'll hand over to the planning officer. Is this Mr. Watson again, is it? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Watson, thank you.
I'm going to show members the slides that we have in a minute, but I just want to refer you to the addendum, which talks about amended plans and the revised recommendation. So the recommendation in the main report was that it was subject to, let me just find what it was. Yeah, minded to refuse unless the proposed dwelling is resited further from the northern site boundary, We now have amended plans which do cite it further from the northern boundary, and the northern boundary is the one with the footpath and the vegetation alongside the footpath. So we're content with that change, and we've now amended the recommendation to be minded to grant conditional planning permission. So back to the slides, please. Okay. So obviously the first slide, I think maybe initially, sorry, Julia, we'll look at this one to start with, and then we'll go to the end. But obviously this shows the red line application site. It doesn't show particularly clearly, but I'm sure members know what Penryn side is like. But we'll go from this slide to the last slides to give you the context. In fact, it's slide number 8 and then slide number 9. So this actually shows the site better in the sense that it's part of the green wedge and it's outside the settlement boundary, and it's the area that's a rectangular shaped area. It's going to be quite hard to describe it to you, but the highway that's on the right hand side has a footpath that goes between the properties, and then it goes to the northern side of this site. So I think you can probably see effectively just below where the black arrow is. If you go below that, below the footpath, and then you've got a rectangular shaped site in there. So you can see that it's part of the green wedge and it's outside the settlement boundary. And if Julia now goes to the next slide, this is to show you the context of that site within the green barrier as a whole. So this is an important consideration because it's currently contrary to policy as being a site that's outside the settlement boundary and a site that's within the green barrier. And national planning policy says that this would be ordinarily inappropriate development in a green barrier. But you can see from the layout there, the context there, that it's an infill type area that's below a footpath, and it's because of that nature we don't think it has any real significant landscape impact. And the policy section are looking at, when they review the LDP, they will be looking to take this area out of the green barrier and put it in the settlement boundary. But currently we have that departure situation, and that's why we've advertised this application as a departure, going through that process. But we think despite it being a departure, it's acceptable in landscape terms, and we don't have any significant concerns over that. Going to the other slides then, and I think we'll look at the floor plans to start with, to give you an idea, and the site plan to give you an idea what's shown on the site. So if we start from the second one, please. So you've got Tudor Lodge on the left-hand side at the top, and you've got the application site being, very overgrown on to the other side of the lane, other side of the private drive, I should say. And then the next slide, please. This is showing the layout that before it was amended, and we felt that it was too close to the northern boundary. And when in the amended plan, what they've done is just literally shift the dwelling further south a couple of meters to where they're closing that gap between where the dwelling is and where the steps are, and it's moved it a bit further away from the boundary. So the next one, please. That shows the slightly resited position of the dwelling. Okay, next one, please. So it's a 2-bedroom dwelling, split level design. It will look like a 2-story dwelling from the east, whereas from the west, it will look like a 1-story dwelling. But it's split level design. If you now go to slide number 10, these are some of the photographs that are taken. And this is the driveway that leads from the highway into the site and past where that light blue coloured vehicle is. This shows the sweep of the private drive that accesses the Tudor Lodge and the adjoining property on the right hand side, which is in separate ownership. Next slide, please. So this is turning 180 degrees, or then looking down the road towards the centre of the settlement, And it shows the point that the council was saying about it being a narrow road, no footways, single track. Vehicles effectively have to stop for each other, maybe reverse. The opening to this site would effectively form a kind of passing bay, as would other access points into other properties. But that is the sort of that shows the highway context. And let me just, I think the next slide to see is if you go back to the very first slide, Julia, with the location plan. We were looking at a section of highway from the blue edged land going further south, but effectively it's that type of highway, narrow, single track, limited passing places, until you go south and then east, and then you go to the main road where it becomes a two vehicle road. So if we carry on with the photographs and go to photograph number 12, it shows some of the adjoining properties. So this is looking up the road slightly from the entrance to the site. Number 13 shows again, looking from within the site back to the highway. If we go to, okay, yeah, if you go through them, that's the adjoining property that shares the same access. Next one, please. This is the existing building, Tudor Lodge. Next one, please. Yep, so that's that. Right. And the next one, please. This is the adjoining property, which is, so this is from when you go into the site and you're standing at the top of the site and looking at the neighbouring property to the side. Next one, please. That's the neighbouring property's garden, and it shows the application site on the sort of lower left-hand side of the photograph, which is very overgrown. Next one, please. This is just moving around slightly. Next one, please. This is standing further down in the site, looking back up towards Tudor Lodge. Next one, please. So it's a steeply sloping site, and it's fairly heavily overgrown. This is looking more towards the footpath, which you can't actually see the footpath because it's so overgrown. Next one, please. This is largely what the site looks like. Next one, please. From looking from within that overgrown area back towards Tudor Lodge. Next one, please. That's the same sort of view. Next one, please. This is looking eastwards from the sort of eastern end of the site over the lower properties that are further east. Next one, please. Looking back up the other way again. Next one is what the footpath looks like, which is very overgrown, but with a substantial overgrown hedgerow row of trees to the side of it, which is now has a greater separation from the application building. And that's all I wanted to show. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, members, I'll open it for debate. Any members want to comment? Councillor Chris Cater.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as you know, this is my ward. Committee members have been up to Penryn side on a few occasions and know the horrendously narrow lanes we have up there. Bringwint Lane is one of the narrowest and steepest, so I entirely understand Councillor Carroll's presentation about this and her concerns, because I share them as well. The factor about the green wedge, as you know, I have defended green wedges many times, and I do have concerns if ever they're tampered with. But on this occasion, I do have to agree it is a logical rounding off of the settlement boundary, and it is a very a small area right at the edge of the southeast corner. So I know that our present LDP has it not included in the settlement boundary, but I don't have any concerns about the replacement LDP being shifted that little bit to the footpath. The footpath isn't as bad as the photograph you've shown. I went down there last weekend and it was perfectly passable. But I was originally going to ask for a site visit, but I think Mr. Watson has been very thorough with his photographs and explanations and the various angles and distances and aspects. So, you know, I don't think that is necessary. So as far as the green wedge, I don't really, in this application, I don't mind if it is a departure. The fact is, though, that I won't be supporting the application because anything putting more pressure on that narrow lane, I couldn't support it. There are accidents, there are scrapes, people's walls are always being bashed. And I know it's only a 2-bedroom split level dwelling, but I don't think I could really support any further traffic going up and down there.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Councillor Ken Stevens.
Thanks, Chair. I can understand Councillor Chris's concerns, but I mean, the site is like any other site here in North Wales. It could really be anywhere in North Wales. We've got those developments everywhere. I would like to move the officer's new recommendation, the one they've come to now, seeing as that the actual building has been moved southwards away from the footpath. Chair, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ken. Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams. Councillor Sue.
Good Mr.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. I have to admit that I've got concerns about hearing the local member talking about safety and this issue of visibility as well. But by looking and reading through the report, I see
I know that our highways department have raised no objections. I must thank you, Mr. Watson, for the images that you provided to us this morning, because as you know, as I've noted a few times now within our planning committees, I do really miss our site visits because of the time that we're living within. So the images that you provide us are absolutely invaluable, really, to put everything into some sort of context for us. So, and listening to what you have said as well, as our planning officer, Mr. Watson, I feel content that I would be in a position to second the proposal made by Councillor Ken and support the recommendation in front of us this afternoon, minded to grant conditional planning permission. Thank you.
Councillor Sue. Councillor Austin Roberts.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's not very often that I disagree with the Councillor Sue Williams, but I'm going to do so this time. I do feel that this is a site visit that we should have been looked at and that we should have had a visit. And with someone who's quite familiar with the area, there are a lot of narrow lanes in that area, and it's obvious that the two local councillors with the information about the local area are against this application. But I have a question from Mr. Watson. In his opinion, is there a way of developing more buildings on this site, or is this site only suitable for one development?
Thank you, Councillor. The site, you know, could be developed for all sorts of things. So it could be developed for more dwellings quite comfortably, in my mind. But having said that, the style of the dwelling that's proposed is sort of in keeping with the dwellings around it. 2-bedroom split-level property, fairly modern design. So and realistically, any change will, and obviously it's going to say that any change to that will need another planning application. So if they wanted to change it from 1 dwelling to 2, it would have to come back through planning, or to 3 or to 4 or whatever. I don't think
but it would be possible to build more properties on there.
Well, I don't see why it wouldn't be. I mean, you could have effectively you could have 2 apartments and exactly the same footprint, or you could have a slightly bigger footprint and you could have 2 dwellings. It's entire, the site's big enough. It's not constrained. There are constraints in terms of the vegetation, and by having a smaller-ish footprint, they're minimizing the loss of the vegetation, which we want to keep because good for wildlife and ecology and biodiversity. So it's a good, in a sense, it's not a cramped development. There's got a lot of space on the site, and they're keeping a lot of that vegetation, and they're keeping.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Ivor Lloyd. Councillor Ivor.
Can I let Austin finish what he wanted to say? Thank you very much, Councillor Ivor. What I wanted to say, Chair, was because of that answer to my question, I do feel then that my concern is the narrow lanes in Penryn side. Okay, 1 or 2 cars maybe aren't going to make much of a difference, but if you're developing more and more, then it will create problems. And I know that Councillor Sue has mentioned that the highways haven't objected, but that to me isn't a new thing, is it? So because of the danger of more developments on this site and the increase in traffic, then I'm finding it really hard to support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Allen Hunter.
Did Councillor Ivor want to come in first?
Please, yeah. Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry, somebody took you off my list. Sorry about that, Councillor Ivor. Yes, carry on, please.
We're going to hear in.
I've got the same opinions as the councillor, the local councillors. Nothing beats the experience and the information of local councillors. I think everything else, I know everything else is in its place and that everything has been changed to make it work, but I'm still concerned about the highway side of it. And that's the reason why I can't support it at this moment in time. Thank you. And also as well, I would like to see this, to be honest. Sorry, I've got a bad connection today. I would like to see this as well, happening as well, but it depends. But we have to use the eyes of the local members and listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivor. Councillor Allen Hunter. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question really for Mr. Watson, which may have already been answered because of the size of the site. If this was to go ahead, I take it all the contractors' vehicles and building work vehicles would be on site and not parked anywhere around, blocking anyone's access or making it difficult for people to drive and walk around that area. I'd like to, if it does go through, to make sure there's a condition at least to make sure all contractor vehicles are on site and nowhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Phil Capper. Councillor Phil.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've got a couple of concerns about this. My first one was the green wedge issue. Members will be aware that we've recently had a decision from a planning inspector on another site that we refused. And the comments that the inspector made in support of our refusal were the impact on the views in the locality and the impact on the surroundings. Now, it seems to me that Councillor Chris is saying that, in his opinion, that's not particularly significant on this site. Is that the case, Councillor Chris? Yeah, he's nodding. I'm assuming that's confirming that. However,
Yeah.
his other views on the road, I have to concur that it is very narrow. It's in this instance, I'm going to have to rely on the local members to take a view. Again, it shows why we need these site visits. But I'm mindful of voting against on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Lewis.
Well, thank you, Chair. If I've understood the drawings correctly, I think Councillor Chris is right that we're talking about infill here, and I think he indicated that it wouldn't be included as part of the green wedge going forward with the revised LDP. And I think given the fact that it's literally one dwelling that's going on that site, I think the impact in terms of highways, which I think they have recognised, is going to be minimal. Admittedly, in the short term during construction, there's going to be extra traffic, but I think given the size of the site, there's plenty of room for construction vehicles to be on it. So I think bearing that in mind, as it basically is a cul-de-sac, so it's not going to get a significant amount of passing traffic. And whilst I appreciate that there are a lot of narrow roads around there, it's not specific to Penryn side. There are many other areas that we've visited within the county equally difficult to traverse. So I'm going to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Mr. Watson, I believe that you've indicated you want to come back.
I was just wondering whether members want to do a site visit, because I'm thinking, you've seen the photographs. They don't show all of the highway connectivity, and obviously I've walked up and down that road. I know the local members are aware of it and obviously know it very well, but the rest of the members, I think maybe members should have to walk up and down it together and assess it, because if that becomes the sort of turning point with a decision, I think it will be something which I think it'd be useful for members to have that knowledge when you're making the decision. If you don't think you've got enough information as it stands.
Thank you.
Can I propose that we do have a site visit, that we defer this until we have a site visit?
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay. I'll just let the rest of the members speak. Councillor, they've all decided they're not going to speak now. So we've had a proposer and a seconder, which was to approve the application. And after deliberation, we've had a proposer and a seconder.
Can I withdraw my proposal, Chair, if we're going to have a site visit?
Yeah. I'm trying to think who seconded it originally. Councillor Sue. Councillor Sue, do you still want to go ahead with the proposal to approve the application, or do you want to accede to having a site visit and deferring the application? You have to unmute, Councillor Sue.
Happy to go. Thank you. Happy to go for the site visit. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, members. Well, that's been withdrawn, and we have a proposer and a seconder to defer the application for a site visit. So I will still put it to the vote. So those for deferring and site visit. So you just let Jane know whether you're for the deferral, against it, or abstaining. Thank you. Jane.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Councillor Phil Capper.
Site visit.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
Abstain.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Nigel Smith. Councillor Nigel Smith. Is he?
I'm not sure whether
Sorry,
he's
Jane.
present. Oh,
Yes,
there he is.
let's do the site visit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ken Stevens.
In favour of a site visit. Thank you.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
I abstain, Jane, yep.
Okay, thank you, members. You've approved a site visit for that application.
Okay, so the officers will arrange for a site visit in due course. Okay, members, if we move on to the next application, which is 0/47580, it's the variation of condition 1 of a planning approval 5/2149, and this is to allow the provision of a 12-month season for a temporary 2-year period at Golden Gate Holiday Centre, Towing Road. Okay, can I bring the planning officer in? I think this is Kerry, is it?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Just to let you know, there are 4 different.
Can I just interject, Kerry, before you start? Sorry, I'll have to declare an interest. I used to do work landscaping for this company on a different site in Cedar Bach, so I'm going to step out if you don't mind, just to be safe. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Ivor.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realise it was the Golden Gate. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ivor, we can put you in the waiting room.
Thank you, Jane.
You can continue now, Councillor Trevor.
Okay, Kerry.
Just to let you know, there are 4 separate applications relating to different parts of the site, different areas of the site, but all 4 permissions have similar conditions in relation to seasonal occupancy period. Essentially, although it's 4 applications, I think we can discuss it together, but we will need 4 separate votes. There are a couple of matters to report in the addendum. The first is there's no objection to holiday occupancy from the town council. The second point is we haven't had any further comments from the emergency service consultees. We've now amended the recommendation. The original recommendation was minded to refuse unless the flood risk issues are resolved. We're satisfied that the flood risk issues can be resolved. So the recommendation now reads minded to grant conditional planning permission, but strictly for a 2-year period. So at the end of the 2-year period, they will revert back to the existing conditions.
Thank you, Kerry. Members, I'll pass it over to you. Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams. Councillor Sue.
Yeah, Mr. Cadeirydd.
Thank you, Chair.
Minded to grant conditional planning permission for a 2-year period. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did. I was looking at the original recommendation, which to refuse, and I was scratching my head because there are caravan parks or holiday parks on the same coastal stretch who already have 12 months licenses. And I'm also mindful of the fact that we will be putting in a new sea defence. So yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams' proposal that we take the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't got any other members down to speak. We have a proposer and a seconder to approve the application. So if members would just let Jane know how they want to vote, which is for, against or abstaining. Thank you. Jane.
Thank you, members. Councillor Philip Capper.
For.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd. He's left the meeting, of course. Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts. Councillor Austin. Councillor Austin Roberts. Okay, he must be having connection issues. Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
For.
And Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members.
I'm back.
Okay, not to worry, Councillor Austin, we missed that. The recommendation has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, members, the next one is 0/47581. This is the variation of the condition number 4 on this planning approval, 5/1969. It's also at Golden Gate Holiday Centre. And Kerry, I don't know if you want to make any comments on it. No. Okay, members, we have to obviously follow the correct procedure. So I would ask, I've got Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams who wants to speak. Councillor Sue.
Councillor Sue, you're on mute.
Yeah, you need to unmute.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, happy to support the recommendation as set out by our officers. Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Phil. Okay, members, if you could indicate to Jane again whether you're for, against or abstaining. Jane.
Thank you, members. Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
For.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
For.
And Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. That recommendation has been approved.
Thank you, members. The next application is 0/47582. It's the variation of condition number 1 of a previous approval, 5/2176, also at Golden Gate Holiday Centre. I don't know if the planning officer has got anything to say. No. Okay, members, I'll pass it over to you.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams wants to come in.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr. As I'm on a roll this morning, I'm going to propose this application as well. Happy and content to propose the recommendation in front of us. Thank you.
I'd like to second the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. Okay. So again, once again, members, we've had a proposal and a seconder. I should really ask, is there any other proposals? No. Well, okay. Well, we could just indicate to Jane again whether you're for, against, or abstaining. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Philip Capper.
For.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
For.
And Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Thank you. I can confirm the recommendation has been approved.
Thank you. And the final one on this site is 0/47583. It was the variation of condition 5 of the previous approval, which is 0/25445, and also at Golden Gate Holiday Centre. I'm assuming that Kerry doesn't want to make any comment on this. No. Okay. Over to you, members.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams and Councillor Dave Rees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, more than happy and content to propose the recommendation in front of us today. Diolch.
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, no other proposals. Okay, if you could ask the members again, Jane, whether they're for, against, or abstaining. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phil Capper.
A difficult one. For.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
4.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
4.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Thank you, members. The recommendation has been approved.
Okay, members, we'll move on to 0/47596. It's the construction and operation of 2 B8 warehousing units in 2 phases with ancillary office space, including preparatory earthworks, hard standings and associated infrastructure at Branwen 5-tier fluid Enterprise Park, Kimmel Bay. Planning Officer Kerry?
Nothing to report.
Okay, fine. Okay, members.
Can I just check with you, Chair, that Councillor Ivor is back on board?
Councillor Ivor has currently left the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you'll have to help me here, Jane, because I seem to have lost me participants list up the side of the screen, so I'm not aware of which members are asking
Okay,
to speak.
not to worry, Councillor Trevor. Councillor Nigel Smith would like to come in.
Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd just like to move the officer's recommendation, minded to grant conditional planning permission. I think it's pleasing that we're seeing development on the Tirtluid estate. It's been dormant for too long, and we could certainly do with the employment in Conway. So I'm happy to propose the approval.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I was going to propose it, Chair. It's nice to see jobs coming into the area, but I'll second it anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Ken.
Nobody else has indicated they wish to speak.
Okay, Jane. Okay, members, we've had a proposer and a seconder to approve the application. Is there any other alternative proposals? No. Okay, well, if you could indicate to Jane when your name's called, whether you're for the application as per the officer's report, or you're against it, or you're abstaining. Thank you, Jane.
Okay. Thank you, members. Councillor Phil Capper.
4.
Councillor Chris Cater.
4.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
4.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
4.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
4.
Councillor Dave Rees.
4.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
4.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
4.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
4.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. The application has been approved.
Thank you, members. The next application is 0/47717. It's the proposed relocation of a grade 2 listed lighting column at Vaughan Street, Standard now. The planning officer got any?
Thank you,
comments?
Chairman.
Yeah.
The recommendation has been amended. The wording has been changed. This type of application, which is made by the local authority for listed building consent, has to be referred to the Welsh ministers for the Welsh ministers to decide. It's not decided by the local authority. So we've slightly amended the recommendation to say that it's to refer the application to the Welsh ministers to determine, but also to inform the Welsh ministers that the local authority is minded to support the grant of conditional listed building consent. So that's just for clarification. Thank you, members.
Thank you, members. I have got my list back and I can't see anybody wants to.
Councillor Nigel Smith, Phil Capper and Chris Cater want to come in, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jane. Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to accept the officer's recommendation and to give the ministers the responsibility for this weighty decision.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. I think Jane said Councillor Phil, was it? Councillor Phil Capper.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, didn't we have a similar application about 12 months back? And is this the same issue? Could I ask the officers?
Yeah. Councillor Kerry, do you want to just enlighten the councillor?
It's Dave Watson here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, the committee did consider a similar scheme. That the previous scheme was to relocate 2 lighting columns. That's now been amended. There's now only 1 lighting column, which is why they've had to reapply. It's also moved to a slightly different place to what it was before. So, but yeah, members did consider something very similar previously.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. In that case, I'm happy to second the proposal to refer it to the.
Thank you, Councillor Phil. Did you say there was another speaker,
Councillor
Jane?
Chris Cater wants to come in.
Okay, Councillor Chris.
I won't be long because I was just going to propose it or second it, but you know, it's in relation to the redevelopment of this strategic site at the former Tudnow Castle Hotel, which we all want to get up and running and finished as soon as possible. And there will be highway and pedestrian improvements, and this is all part of it, isn't it, with the new lighting column? So I welcome this application.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. I haven't got any other proposals. So, Jane, once again, could you ask the members how they want to vote, whether it's for, against, or to abstain?
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith. Councillor Nigel.
Unmute, Nigel.
Obliged.
For.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members.
Unless I'm wrong, I think that is the last application. So thank you, members. Diolch o galon. And
sorry, no, Councillor Trevor, you're jumping the gun. We do have another application to consider. Yes.
I didn't get a chance to vote there, Chair.
And everyone, I can confirm, Councillor Ken, everyone voted and the application has been approved.
I didn't get a chance to vote.
I'm just trying to. It was sorry about that, Jane, but it wasn't on my list. So, so perhaps you could help me out.
Chair, if I could just suggest that the next application is 0/47737, which is the approval of reserve matters in respect of Unit 1 only, access, appearance and landscaping, layout and scale of planning consent 0/44795, light industrial park, consenting of a range of industrial units, site access, drainage infrastructure and other ancillary elements, including landscaping. I will have to declare an interest in this because I've sat on the Penman Road project panel for this, so I intend to lead the meeting and leave you to it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nigel. Have a good weekend. Okay, can I bring in the planning officer? So I think this is
David Watson.
Councillor, yeah, Dave, yeah.
Sorry,
please.
Yeah, members, just to recap on the description, this is a reserve matters application. The committee or the council has already approved outline permission for this industrial park, and it's also approved some of the reserve matters on some of the park, including the wider landscaping and the main access into the industrial park. So this is a reserve matters application just for unit plot 1 within that industrial park. In terms of the addendum, we have an amended proposed site plan which shows 2 motorcycle parking places and 4 cycle storage racks within the site. We've also had a soft landscaping scheme for the application site, which includes tree and shrub planting, together with details of the implementation and the maintenance of the planting. The CDS department of the council has submitted the existing gas mitigation design for units 2 to 5. Units 2 to 5 have already been constructed. They were constructed under a separate full planning permission. They're the ones on the southern side of the site. So they've submitted the gas mitigation design for those units, and that will also be used for unit 1, the proposed unit. The principal environment officer He says that that design has involved the necessary expertise, and he refers to the relevant gas control guidance. And he says if that's followed, it provides the required degree of protection for the remaining development on the site. NRW has raised significant concerns with the application, and they're in the main report as well. They haven't changed their mind on this, but they raised significant concerns, and they recommend that reserve matters approval isn't approved. And the reason they give is that they say two main points there. The landscape impact, probably the main overall point. It's 200 meters from the national park, and they say that all the planting should be done in combination with the SUDS drainage scheme to create a established landscape in advance of the plots coming forward. They say details of the whole scheme for the industrial estate do not appear to have been provided, or phasing to indicate when that implementation will take place. And they say that the submitted tree management plan isn't actually a woodland management plan for the site. Just to qualify that, the woodland management plan, the second point there that they raised, that was something that was put in by the council's CDS department rather than by the applicant, and it was meant to look at tree policy across the council assets that are managed by the council. There is the landscaping proposals for the whole of the industrial park, including the retention of woodland, are controlled under existing planning conditions, and they're also controlled by the council because it's council land. The woodland to the north of the site is alongside the A55, and that's controlled by the Welsh Government Trunk Road Agency. The overall landscaping for the industrial park was approved under a previous reserve matters application, which included existing trees being retained, details of new woodland and tree planting, biodiversity enhancements. Approval's also been given for active travel connectivity measures and surface water drainage measures, and all of those things have now been carried out because the units 2 to 5 have now been constructed. So the active travel measures have been provided for the whole site. The surface water drainage has been provided for the whole site, including the swales and other things like that. The woodland and tree planting has all been carried out on the whole site. So we're now looking at plot unit 1 and the details of that, and the amended scheme, the amended details that have come in are acceptable to the officers. So we don't have the same concerns that NRW have raised, and I think they've kind of misunderstood that some of these details are already controlled and already approved. And if members want to see, I've got some photographs that we can show you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Members, Councillor Peter Lewis.
Well, to my knowledge, Chair, I think we visited this site twice on site visits, and I think having read the report, it's only improving what we initially approved. So I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Councillor Dave Rees. Councillor Dave. Unmute, Councillor Dave. There we are.
On my way. Sorry about that, Chair.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. I'd just like to second Councillor Peter Lewis's acceptance of the officer's recommendations. As Councillor Peter has said, we've been there twice. We've climbed the embankment up onto the old football pitch. We've viewed it. We've seen it. The place is already under construction. So I'd like to second Councillor Peter's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. I haven't got any other members down that I can see on the list. So we've had a proposer and a seconder to approve the application. I take it that there's no other recommendations. So if we can put that to the vote and indicate to Jane when your name's called out, whether you're for, against or abstaining. Thank you. Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
4.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
4.
Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
For Blythe.
4.
Councillor Dave Rees.
4.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
4.
Councillor Nigel Smith. Councillor Nigel has left the meeting. Councillor Ken Stevens.
4.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, Jane.
Thank you, members. The application has been approved.
Thank you, Jane. I take that is the last application, Jane, now. So
Yes,
I'd like
it
to
is.
thank
Thank
members.
you.
Diolch o galon. Hwyl fawr. Have a good weekend, members. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
members.
Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair.